So my name is Priya Rajagopal. I have over 12 years of product management experience. I've been with Amazon from past 5 years. So I've worked for 4 years on Alexa, different products on Alexa, and right now I'm working on Alexa Video. That's voice enabling your video experience through a Fire TV or an Xbox or a Roku. So any of your video devices will be voice enabled. It's a super exciting product, and if you don't have an Alexa yet, you should definitely get one. So I'm also a dog lover. I have a cute puppy. Her name is Coco, and then definitely an inclusion advocate. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about effective product management using a very simple concept: the left brain and the right brain, right? So as you know, like the left brain is used for a lot of logical things, analytics, verbal communication, being rational. And then the right brain is more about like creative vision, for example, or like getting big ideas, or like being artsy or being emotional. What I've seen in my experience so far, I'm going to talk about 7 different aspects. So the left brain, mostly it's execution, being data-driven and paying attention to detail, driving clarity, and being the subject matter expert, right? Like there are many more aspects of product management, but from my opinion, nailing these 4 is going to give you success in a product management role. And then there's also a transition from being a product manager to being a product leader. So the best product leaders have their right brain working well, in the sense that they're able to map that execution and data-driven clarity and subject matter expert to having like a clear and creative vision, an absolutely clear strategy. They have high emotional intelligence when it comes to empathy or like treating people or relationship management, as well as they are up to date with information, right? Like, so I'm going to talk about each of these aspects, but the main message I want to convey is it's not just okay to be a product manager, you need to evolve. And I wish somebody had told me this like 10 years ago, and I would really focus at the start of my career, just using my right brain a little bit more, because it's so kind of common to just get into the day-to-day aspects of product management and just forget about the bigger picture. So I'm going to take questions in the end. So I'm going to talk about each of these. So execution, that's the number one thing you need to focus on as being a product manager, right? So at Amazon, we usually conduct a lot of like customer interviews and user testing. A lot of it is customer driven. You guys must have heard of it. Like Amazon is a very customer obsessed company, and we continue to be reminded of that every day. So in every meeting, like we make customer the most important part of the meeting, and then just everything else becomes very easy because you're advocating for the customer all the time. And the customer doesn't always have to be like an end user. It could be an internal stakeholder. It could be like an internal system user. It could be anyone. Then running design sprints. So I feel like working with your development team to come up with the right sprint planning techniques, raising the bar on writing user stories, like whether you're doing backlog grooming or like writing an acceptance criteria. You need to be able to run this. Most people just rely on Scrum Masters and things like that, but like I would really advocate for product managers to get involved in day-to-day sprints to make this a well-oiled machine, because every time a product manager is involved in sprint planning and retrospectives, it just gives a more holistic view to the team, and you get a different picture as well, right? Feature prioritization and roadmap planning. So there are different mechanisms that you could use for feature prioritization and roadmap planning that I'm going to talk in a bit. But you have to know your business impact. You need to know the cost of what you're prioritizing, and you also need to know the time to market. And there are plenty of prioritization frameworks that are available, but choose one that works for your product and for you the most, and start like thinking about it deeply and planning that, right? Resource allocation. So definitely like product managers at the start of the career, they don't own a team, but they really have to influence to be able to work with the tech teams and everybody else to get the right amount of resources, right? So whether it's like SDE or UX, you need to be able to articulate why you need resources and work on it, and just not leave it to anybody else to say that, hey, if I don't have resources, I'm not able to kind of build my product or anything. So you should be able to drive your own resourcing by clearly substantiating the need for it. And then translating business to technical requirements and vice versa. Just being able to talk to your stakeholders or to your customers at the 10,000-foot level, and coming back to your tech team and talking at the 1,000-foot level, right? And vice versa. If a technical team comes back with certain requirements from there, and you need to be able to translate that to the business as well. So learning that would really be helpful, because I've seen some product managers just speak technical and they're not able to articulate correctly in terms of business metrics, and then they're not able to kind of translate the business to the technical requirements. So just nailing that, it comes with time, it comes with experience, but knowing that or doing that really well would really help you. And then tracking success metrics. So never start building a product without having a clear goal of what your success metrics are. So you need to have, whether it's a CSAT score, or whether you're going to raise your number of customers or your monthly active users from X to Y, you need to have that clear in your mind, and also kind of share that with your team, just so that they have clarity and you have clarity and you're not shooting in the dark. So that's a good segue. Metrics are a good segue into being data-driven and paying attention to detail. So it's, like I said, metrics, knowing your metrics in and out is just going to make you more and more effective, whether it's during product planning, or whether it's talking to your directors or to your VPs or leadership about business impact, and making sure that even just sounding intelligent or making a point in a meeting, people who are most effective know their numbers in and out. The way we do it at Amazon is we have something called the weekly business reviews, where they're a set of 40 to 50 key metrics that we look at on a weekly basis. So if you look at an Amazon leader, when they read through the metrics, it's like reading a novel. They just know it, they just know, and they can analyze the numbers, and they're like, why is it changing like this? So that's how well versed they are with numbers, and it's something that you need to train your brain as to how you read through these metrics, and kind of make up a pattern in your mind to see how your business is performing overall. I talked about prioritization. There are two main prioritization frameworks I use. One is the RICE methodology, which is measuring reach, impact, confidence, and estimates. So reach is how many people are going to use this, what is the maximum number of users who can use this. Impact is there a monetization impact? Is there an other kind of impact where you have downstream impact, where other services from your company are making money, things like that, right? So you can define the impact. Confidence is, are there any major blockers to get this done this year? If there's a major blocker, are you really going to get that done this year if it's not possible based on any severity issues, right? So how confident are you? And then estimates, right? So you can work with your development teams to come up with what an estimate could be. We use something called t-shirt sizing. So if it's a small, it's 2 to 4 sprints. Medium would be 6 to 10 sprints, and large would be about 10 sprints, right? So just having that will really help you keep a matrix of prioritization of the efforts. And then cost, time to market, and business impact is just it's a simpler one, but if your product doesn't have reach and impact numbers, then you could, reach numbers, then you could just use this framework as well. Be detail-oriented, just don't be afraid to get into the details. A product manager's job is to know the ins and out of the product, ask why, ask how, and then some product managers who are like even technical product managers don't want to get too much into design concepts or like, too much into the coding aspects. I think it's super useful. Like the first thing I do when I start a product is sit with my development lead and go over the architecture and understand like, what are the different aspects involved, what are the dependent systems involved, just so that like you have like a wider picture. So just try to get every detail possible and make sure that you are cognizant of things. And then just in general, just raise the bar on quality and, just high bar. Like I said, like nail your acceptance criteria, nail your emails, like pay attention to how you're communicating. Documents, for example, Amazon uses a lot of like 6-page documents or 2-page documents. So we get called out on minor grammatical errors, right? Like, so just make sure you raise the bar on that, just because that just builds credibility, and people are just going to respect you more, and also like help you, and they know that like you're expecting a quality of that in your product as well. So you just end up with better products. Driving clarity. Again, it comes back to how clear you are in your mind about what your product is, where it's headed. It can be crazy confusing, especially when you lead like large products. It can get crazy as those roads, but you need to kind of drive clarity in your mind as well as like with the team, right? Like clearly communicate your vision, what are your goals, like what are your roadmaps and requirements. And every person who's working on the product should really know like what you're intending to achieve, right? So that is super, super critical. And I've also seen some product people, or just in general, people write super long emails, super verbose, like, in meetings, they just talk and talk and talk. Like, that derails a lot of people. In fact, it creates more confusion. You just try and be as articulate as possible with a few words, but make it really effective. So just practice and practice. Like, I get really inspired from some of my vice presidents of products and things like that. They are so specific in their choice of words. In a meeting, they might just say 3 sentences, but those are big decisions that make a lot of difference to the team, right? Like, so just listening, understanding everybody's problem, being clear in your head, and then driving that clarity to the team becomes super important. Be responsive to your team. It's super critical that, if a team or a developer or like a designer needs your input, just say like, hey, let's chat tomorrow, or like, don't put that off, because like, you really need to kind of act like a CEO of your product and make the product your baby, and then pay attention to what your developers are asking for, right? Like a product manager's day-to-day can be super crazy, but just being responsive helps, right? Like, some product managers just make that their utmost priority every day, and then they can prioritize the remaining things rest of the time. And then staying organized, right? Like I used to be really clunky at the start, and then it used to be really crazy for me to get through my day because, I wasn't organized. And with time, like, managing notes, like maybe use a OneNote, or like your documents put into the right folders, or having clear to-do lists. Things like that really helps, because if somebody asks me a question, I can immediately look up my notes and just say like, hey, this is what it is, and this is the decision we agreed to. Like, just staying that and keeping, like, if you write wikis or like if you have Confluence pages, just organize all the thoughts and organize meeting summaries and just keep things straight in a product management lifecycle, which will really, again, help drive clarity to both you and to your team. And then last but not the least in the left brain aspect is being a subject matter expert. So the best product managers know their products in and out. They know why things were done, how things were done, why we made certain decisions, how your product is performing. So just so that you are the go-to person, right? Like of your product, there shouldn't be anybody else like thinking like you for your product. So know the business and tech aspects of it. So I told you this earlier too, don't hesitate to know the tech aspects of it. be an ardent user of the product, right? Like if you are not using your product, it's really hard to tell like how your customers are feeling about your product. Like, did something break? I have like at least 8 Alexas at home, trying different things, and yeah, my husband hates it, but like my house is like totally bugged. So just using that every day, like helps me go like fix issues or prioritize things or know things ahead of time as to this might be like an awesome feature, or like people who come to my house can give me a suggestion. So just be an ardent user of your product, and it also gets you respect from your team. Passionate is something that comes from within. If you're not feeling the passion for the product you're building, don't build that product. Just move to another team or just pick up another product, because it's really important that you stay motivated. It's not an easy job. Like, you are pulled in 10 different directions every day as a product manager. So it's really critical that you stay passionate about it. You like what you're doing, and when you wake up, you want to go build new things. And then being a subject matter is one thing, but just don't get arrogant about it. Like, there are always things that you don't know, right? Like, maybe it's a new perspective, or like you may just not be aware there was some change that was not made without your knowledge. So just be open to knowing new things about your product. That will only make you better as a subject matter expert. Okay, so before I move into the right brain stuff, like, did you guys have any questions?
You just talked about backlog screening.
Yeah.
So how do we get into it?
Backlog grooming?
In our company, we have a huge backlog.
Yeah.
We don't know how to prioritize and how to screen properly.
Yeah. So what
do you use any particular method for that?
So basically, as a product manager, we have a bi-weekly backlog grooming meeting, where we look at the backlog of product stories, and I go with the top most prioritized ones. And then what I do is I sit with the tech leads and go over whether the requirements are clear, or the acceptance criteria, if anything is missing, like what other information is missing, and in terms of justification, does it have the right justification, right? Like, so we do that on a weekly or bi-weekly, whatever works for your product, so that for the next sprint planning, the top 8 to 10 stories are fully groomed, and everybody has the information that they need for that. So, yeah.
I have a question about the goal setting that you mentioned at the beginning. Was at the execution, you do the prioritizing, but
Yeah.
that prioritizing may be aligned with the goals. But I'm wondering, as a product manager, in your experience, how did you establish the goals of the whole project?
Goals of all the products, or?
I don't know about that you're managing.
Yeah, I mean, the goal would definitely be like, see, for example, we want to grow like Alexa video into multiple devices, right? Like, so my goal would be like, hey, I want to establish X million users, monthly active users, by this year, right? And that is kind of based on data from previous years to see like, what is the realistic goal, right? Like, so we spend a lot of time. So I draft the goals and I share it with my leadership. There's a lot of questioning about like, is this the right goal? Like, last year we didn't have that much of a success. On what basis are you coming up with the goal? So the goal is just not built out of the blue. It's using a lot of data and analysis that you come up with that. Yeah. And then, okay.
Speaking of prioritization.
I know. And you also do have something called input and output goals. So output goal is your main North Star metric where you want to drive your product. It could be a singular goal. And input goals would be smaller goals, right? Like that would lead to the output that you're looking for. So, what's that? Yeah, like, maybe you have 4 or 5 different goals which would contribute to the main goal. So we call them secondary or input goals, and then the main one would be your output goal.
Just a quick question. In a Scrum team, all the explanation that you're giving about prioritizing, going through all the backlogs, even product owner also does the same thing. Does Amazon differentiate between product owner and product manager, or
no,
is the same thing?
It's the same thing, yeah. Cool. All right. Oh, you do have one more question. Yes.
Sorry, so I wondered how it is that you manage from a prioritization perspective using rice initially versus customer impact that develop over time.
Customer impact.
So I'll rephrase. So I'm curious about prioritization over the lifetime of the product.
Yeah.
So initially, yes, you can use rice to identify prioritization. But how do you manage that in comparison to customer impact that may come up along the way?
Yeah, I mean, so prioritization is never a one-time thing. So you should be prioritizing every sprint, right? And you can apply the reach impact confidence estimate to any of your stories, even if it's smaller ones, right? Like it doesn't have to be a one-time thing. And yes, you know, you learn a bunch of things throughout your product execution lifecycle, and your initial prioritization that you have might not be valid anymore. So you can always revisit that, and you have to review it on a bi-weekly basis, you know, either in your backlog grooming, or you could do it in your sprint planning, and communicate to the team clearly that, hey, this story is not valid anymore because, you know, we just found out this information, so we're changing that. So one thing I would warn you of, like when you're changing priorities to the dev team, they're just going to hate you more and more. So you just need to give them the rationale as to why you're changing that. And you also need to do some homework so that you're just not randomizing your developers. Like just like one sprint you say like, oh, you know, you need to work on this service, and second sprint you're saying like, just leave what you've done and go to the next one, right? Like it just leads to frustration. And so you need to kind of plan ahead. But if you do get like a high impact, high severity issue, I'm sure your devs would understand if you have the clear justification. Okay. So the right brain stuff, like I said, you know, product managers, if you nail these four, in my opinion, you're just going to be a rock star PM. And like you keep getting the feedback, oh my God, like Priya can execute, you do really well, you're just delivering stuff left, right, and center, right? Like, but how long? Like you'll just be stuck at that, right? Like you're like, okay, you're a rock star PM, like what next? So, you know, if you want to grow further and, you know, you want to build a team, you want to like become the head of product management. So you really need to start like thinking ahead. And, you know, if you're starting off early in your career, just pay attention to this. Like I said, like if somebody had told me this 5 years ago, I would have just not focused like 90% of my time on execution and these things, right? Like, so as a product manager, you always need to have like a vision, right? Like for example, Amazon's vision is really clear and it's really bold. So I'm going to step into that. It is definitely a very bold vision where they say we want to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, and we also want to be able to sell anything in the world online, right? So it's a really large vision where, you know, anything you find, like possibly the vision is to be able to find that on Amazon. So just have a bold vision. You know, if you need input from your leadership, just talk a lot. Don't hesitate to talk to your leadership, even if they're 3 levels above you, because they have been through this and they have those perspectives. So just keep poking around, like in your networking events, or like just to see where their minds are headed at. And then most companies have these all hands meetings. Go to that, don't miss that. Like one, you usually get really good food, and second is just, you know, you can network and understand like where the organization is headed, like where the general vision is, so that you can map your vision to the organization vision, which the organization vision will be mapped with the overall company's vision, right? Like so. Just have that in mind and just get feedback on that, and your leadership will really appreciate that. So we also use something called tenets and guiding principles. So this kind of helps you achieve your vision based on certain principles, right? So one of it could be like, I'm not going to take shortcuts in my tech and introduce tech debt to achieve a certain impact on my customers. That could be one guiding tenet. Or like, you know, when you get a partner who is US versus international, which one are you going to prioritize? Or like, you know, what is your prioritization rationale going to be at a very high level? So you need to have some guiding principles which will help you accomplish your strategy and your vision. Strategy is like, how do you get to your vision, right? Like For example, like I can give you just a CX example, right? Like the first thing I would consider in my strategy is just nail the basics. Just get very minimal things working, making sure all the basic stuff is working. Next, I would think of like, hey, you know, I should fix like or enhance the CX with these cool features which would drive like you know, an impeccable CX for my customers. And then the third would be like, I'm going to go introduce delightful features. Like maybe I'll do personalization, or maybe I'll do like cool things where like the customer walks in and the TV just turns on and like tunes to the favorite channel. So just like thinking of those, like what are your stepping stones to get to your vision will be really helpful. And again, don't be hesitant to communicate big ideas. You know, all big ideas need to be communicated. Nothing is too crazy, nothing is too big or too small. So if you have an idea, just write a 2-pager on it, or like, you know, capture it in an email and say like, hey, you know, I just got this idea, what do you think? So another source to get big ideas is to just having brainstorming meetings with your UX designers, other product managers or developers. Like usually they have a ton of ideas and I'm like, okay, where were you? Why didn't you give me this idea previously? So you just need to start collating those ideas and just putting that in your idea list. And then we also do something called the 3-year and 5-year planning. So like 5 years from now or 3 years from now, how would my product look, right? Like what do I want to accomplish? So you know, I also write like a day in the life of a person using my product. Like 5 years from now, how would people be using Alexa for video, right? Like would they just pass by a mirror and the mirror just turns on and starts playing videos, and you know, just crazy things like that. Like, so just think of like what a day in the life of might be 5 years from now, and that would really help you drive like what your 5-year and 3-year plans would be. Emotional intelligence. I cannot emphasize more as to how important this is. I've seen the best product managers fail because they lack EQ, and nobody believes that they lack it. Everybody thinks that they get along with people, but that's just not enough. You really need to have empathy. So empathy for your customers, your stakeholders, for your team, just being open about it, just being self-aware like will really help you understand what is going on in people's mind. Inclusion is always just not about gender or like race or ethnicity. It's more about like, you know, you include everyone in the product ideation process, in the product execution process, making sure that you know, you're striking the balance of being a leader, but at the same time, you know, you're getting ideas and you're open to it. And you're including everyone and you're hearing everyone out, right? Relationship management. So as you grow higher and higher, like building your network within the organization or outside with other vendors or partners from outside really, really helps. Just like, you know, if you're in a difficult situation and you need more resources for something, you know, you can easily ask and people will be willing to do that. Like I know my leaders, one of my mentors, says he spends 30% of his week just networking with people. Like if he's driving back from work, he just calls people and or his old colleagues and talks to them to see how they're doing, what is going on in their organization and things like that, right? Like, and just managing that makes it really simple for you to get things done. If you have the right idea and the right mindset, just go into a meeting and propose this, and you know, you will get buy-in pretty soon. And then it really helps you navigate both internal and external hurdles. I've seen that there are a lot of hurdles that come your way, like, you know, the project might suddenly get deprioritized. You may be put into something else, like you're not liking it, you really believe in that product. So, you know, you just kind of, your past relationships and even being able to influence, you know, you need a lot of emotional intelligence as to how you word a certain sentence in a meeting without sounding aggressive, right? Being assertive. So I just like ask a person who I really admire at work, and I observe a lot, especially if I get a chance to be in a VP meeting or a senior VP meeting. I just observe them a lot as to how by every choice of their word, they're trying to influence a decision in the room. They're trying to influence people. So, just nailing that takes time. And just like if you find like a leader who you're really inspired by, I would definitely say like just observe them, set up time with them, and understand like what the rationale is, right? Yeah, and like I said, you just need to be self-aware. Just know that you need to manage yourself as well, and just stay sane. Yeah, EI plays a lot of importance in a product manager's career. And last but not the least, staying relevant. You might be the subject matter expert. You might like a product a lot. You might be working on it for 5 or 6 years, but you just don't want to get stagnant on the same product, or like you don't want to have like really archaic ways of implementing an idea, right? So just network a lot. Like the fact that you're here means a lot, that you're networking, and you want to learn new perspectives, and you want to learn new things, product cons or events, or just reading blogs like TechCrunch, or just any of VentureBeat, or any of those articles in your downtime will be helpful. Like instead of spending 3 hours on Instagram, just spend like 40 minutes on these articles. Will really help. Just staying relevant. It might like end up being really good for your product itself. Saying like, hey, Apple launched this new thing. Like maybe I should consider this for my product, and you can go pitch this and make your product better. Or you can gauge your interest and say like it might be beneficial for your own career, where you want to go into a different space and learn a new thing, which is a stepping stone in your career overall. And then just be curious. Just knowing stuff, like asking questions, like meeting leadership, like understanding your company's stakeholder statement or a stock statement when they come up with their annual results or like the quarterly results. So just like being curious like really helps. That doesn't mean you can ask 100 questions in a meeting, but just know that like you don't know it all, and you always need to stay hungry and stay foolish. So that was Steve Jobs' line, and I stole it, but that's something that I really believe in, that there's no end to learning as a product manager, just growing yourself as well as growing, keeping up with stuff. So those are most of the things I had, but like any other questions on these aspects that I just spoke about? Yeah.
So do you recommend any blogs or knowledge-based articles that we should go through?
So it depends on your domain that you're interested in. I read TechCrunch, like I read Forbes a lot just to get the business side of things. VentureBeat, Mashable, all of these are good things. And then a lot of these companies, big companies, actually pitch their PR events to these. So you can see a lot of like new releases of what's going on in these companies. So yeah. Any other questions?
I'm kind of curious about your strategy as far as getting resources. You were talking about needing to have matrix and being able to prove why you need more resources or why you're going a certain direction. And I'd love to hear more maybe about some failures you had in that, or how you realized you should have done it differently.
Yeah, I mean, definitely resource constraint is a huge thing. And then a lot of companies, I feel like, you feel that they have all the strategy and everything nailed, but it's just that there's a lot of chaos at times, right? Like, so the biggest failures I've had, like last year, 3 of my biggest projects got deprioritized because of resourcing constraints. And I'm like, what happened, right? Like I made the case, like we had this on the roadmap, I had devs working on it, like how, right? Like, so I mean, it was a setback for me, and I'm like, okay, I really believed in these, but I understood where things were coming from. So what I did was, as a next step, is like, hey, we've completed 90% of this, right? Like I just need 2x resources to go launch this. Like, would you be able to give me this? Because this is the impact I can have. Like, I can have these many users to start using, and this is the benefit I would get, right? Like, so they did get convinced, and we launched it. And once we launched it, customers asked for the next set of features which I had planned. So they were forced to kind of prioritize that. So I think you need, like I said, like you need to have like that emotional intelligence to know how to navigate to your org and to your leadership minds. But resource allocation is a challenge. And then, like I said, like even relationship management with your tech SDMs or like with your leadership would really help you allocate the best top developers to your project. So you should be able to kind of be sneaky about it and just go tell them like, hey, you know, can you get this? And getting one strong developer is equivalent to getting 3 more. So, you know, you could just build that relationship and then start going. So I've used many techniques in those kind of aspects. And then certain cases, I just give a lot of visibility of like the customer asks in terms of weekly reports and things like, hey, this is so broken that we really need to fix this. These are number of complaints I'm getting. So, you know, it's like slowly kind of creating that snowball effect that this is going to get bigger and bigger. If you really believe in it. I wouldn't say like don't manipulate your org if you don't believe in it and, you know, it's going to derail them. That's just going to take off trust from you. But like if you really believe it's important for the success of your organization and somehow the leadership is not listening to that, then you have to kind of push it through. Yeah.
I guess there's something with like Alexa, I'm guessing you have so many customers and like there's so many customer segments. How do you kind of decide who gets prioritized, which needs get prioritized?
Which kind of customer? There are different kind of user research I use. So we have a lot of surveys that go out, and we also have a user research team to kind of call in different cohorts of these customers and see how they use it. And you know, we also interview them to kind of get their feedback as to how often they use it and things like that. So we usually target like power users a lot, who will come back and start using your product alone again and again. So there's a lot of research that goes in with that. So, yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
What is your best day as a product manager, where you sit there and you think, man, I can't believe they paid me to do this?
Yeah. So I don't know, like maybe I'm hitting some midlife crisis or something, but like, you know, once we got like a really nice email from a handicapped person who really thanked us that they could turn on the heat and the lights and TV and everything through their voice without having to, you know, walk around or do things like that. And we just got that email right from Jeff all the way to our team, and I thought that was really rewarding in terms of like having meaning to the technology you're building. Like otherwise initially Alexa was just like a play toy, like people just saying, hey, do this, do that, right? Like, but when you get meaningful feedback from customers, like I mean, you just feel good. So yeah, I'm not so old, I shouldn't have said midlife crisis, but yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Can you summarize the steps you take to launch a product?
Ooh, okay, that's a big one. But yeah, so basically what, at least I'll tell you like what I do. So for next year, we start planning now. So we have something called the roadmap and OP1 planning meetings that start like right now, right? Like it all starts off with one-line ideas. So I have my own set of ideas that I get from customer feedback or how much the product or my area's progress so far. And then I also do a blast email to all my stakeholders saying that, hey, we're doing the planning for next year. What are your ideas, right? Like, so I get like a list of like 60 to 70 different ideas, and then I organize it into different themes. So this is this category, this would solve this, right? And once that's done, there's a lot of brainstorming and discussions that go in as to what that idea is and how impactful it is and things like that, right? Like, so once that is done, the themes I translate all those one-line ideas into more narratives, so that we build a document, and then we have like a clear plan for my area for next year, right? So once that is done, like it goes for resourcing and say that, okay, in your top 5 teams, we're probably going to focus on just the first 2 because that's most important to the organization, and they'll allocate resources. I could change that next year, but for those teams, I get allocation, and within that, then I start doing my customer research and start defining what the requirements are. I get sign-off from all my stakeholders, go into requirements and UX, then it goes into product stories, prioritization, execution, delivery, and once it's delivered, there's a lot of tracking. Like I said, we have weekly business metrics where we track new metrics or for the products that we've launched. So at a high level, that's it. But like, yeah.
One of the things you said was like that you should be passionate about your product.
Yes.
Like, what do you think you're most passionate about?
I've started to watch a lot more TV or video. So definitely like trying things out through different devices. For example, like if I have 5 different types of devices in my house, like one could be a Roku, one could be an Xbox, one could be just an Echo Show or a Fire TV. If I walk in and I say play Interstellar, like what is going to happen, right? Like which device is going to pick it up? Like why did it do that? Like, so I think I've just gotten a lot of like interest in that aspect. So my main background was in software. I was not like a hardware person. So I used to be a developer for 2-3 years at Oracle, and then I transitioned into product management. But I was more like a software person, building software products, websites, and CX experiences. And then my manager gave me a challenge of taking on hardware stuff, and then that's why I got really interested, because that's a whole different beast altogether. So my current passion is just getting to know the hardware side of things as to how it kind of meets the software kind of thing. So. All right. Yeah. Any other questions?
I'm curious how many different products you've managed.
So far? I think I should just count it one day, but I would say over 40.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you typically do when you transition to a new product? Is it usually a completely new product, or are you coming in?
So usually, so I'm either, like early in my career, I did a lot of backend systems, like content management systems. And then I moved into like front-end stuff, where we did a lot of A/B testing and CX improvements, like where I had to develop like internal systems. Usually, you don't care so much about the UX details and things like. Well, you should care, but like devs are like, I don't have that much time to fix this pixel. Yeah, I mean. Every time I go, then I went into front-end stuff, and then I was in apps for a long time. Like I was part of the Amazon App Store, where we were building an app store for all the Android apps, similar to Google Play. And then I moved into voice and then hardware, right? Like, so within each of these, I've managed different products. But the way I come up to speed is just asking or catching hold of subject matter experts and using their time to get ramped up on things. And the first couple of months, I'm just reading a lot or like playing with the product itself to see like how things are, and making sure that I note what I don't like and what I like about the product. And also talk a lot to my designers, because sometimes you're just not creative. So just designers operate in a different way, just so thinking from their perspective would also help. So yeah.
So since there's like 40 products that you manage,
yeah.
And I do understand that there are unique nuances between the products that will determine the metrics that you use, but what would be the top 3 metrics that you would say best identify these towards the successful launch of the product?
Yeah. So in terms of my North Star metrics, it's always been engagement. So you measure engagement by MAUs, like monthly active users. So initially I used to go with overall active users and things like that, right? But that doesn't give you like a good picture. So monthly active users has been my go-to, at least for some of my products. And then if I'm managing back-end systems or even front-end systems, it's a lot about latency and system performance. So you shouldn't be just focused on the front-end aspect. You should also be focused on the back-end aspects. And then I measure a lot of friction. So friction reduction is a big pet peeve for me. Like, a lot of products have like failures and friction. So that is something that I chase quite a bit. So at a high level, engagement, friction, and performance.